Welcome everybody to the Thursday Collective. I'm Don Watkins. I'm here with Nico. Say Nikos.
Hi, Don. Hi, Mark.
And
Hey
we have
man,
Mark Pellegrino here.
what's up,
Welcome
man?
back, guys.
Thank you.
So, one of the really interesting themes of Ayn Rand's ethics is this idea that, like, not everybody desires to live, and indeed that you have to continually reinforce your desire to live, and that the primary way that you do this is through the enjoyment of pleasure. And this is kind of throughout the novels. Brandon has an essay, The Psychology of Pleasure, that touches on it. And, we usually talk, and what gets emphasized properly in objectivism is sort of the primary sources of pleasure in life, of career and romance. But one of the things I'm very interested in is just this idea of filling your life with pleasure. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about that phenomenon and then kind of sources of little pleasures throughout life. But maybe, Nikos, why don't you start? I think it's worth at least putting on the table the difference between Ayn Rand's view of pleasure and the kind of hedonist conception that morality is about gathering up pleasures. Like, what's the distinction? Because she rejects one of those and embraces the other.
Yeah, so I would suggest that I would guess that what you're leading to is that pleasure still needs to be within a context of something which is good for you and something which is, why it is good for you. So I know many people who say, for example, well, my life sucks, but my only pleasure is a cigarette. So, don't push me to quit smoking. Or for other people, it's drinking. So I would even question whether this should fall into the category of pleasure. So this is something that gives you some relief or some escape, I would say. But then shall we put it under the category of pleasure? And the answer is probably no. Now, when it comes to hedonism, it is you collect things that make you feel good. And the question is, do they make you feel good and then next morning you also feel good? Or do they make you feel good because you've heard that they make you feel good? And sex is a very good example. So in Atlas Shrugged, there's this scene with Betty Pope and James Taggart. And they describe sex as they're doing it because they've heard that this is what's supposed to do it. They've heard that other people are doing it. And when James wakes up, he asks himself, why am I doing these things? So it's clear that although you get some sort of pleasure, like your body at some point somehow reacts, because otherwise you're going to be able to perform, at the end of the day, it's not pleasurable. So the big picture is, does it give you genuine pleasure? And for me, the test is, do you feel proud and good about it the day after? And B, is it integrated in terms of what are your overall aims? And I'll have to say, as a spoiler, not as a spoiler, something that we need to discuss, that for me, it's not very, very clear what is the limit on what the integration should be. Because I have two examples. One is siestas, and one is the fireplace, which, although it gives some pleasure, I have troubles figuring out how they're integrated in wider goals. So we can discuss this a bit later, the psychology of siesta.
Awesome. Mark, any thoughts?
Nothing that I could add to that. I don't think that every pleasure has to be integrated into a wider thing, but it certainly shouldn't be bad for you. It should be good for you in some way. And I'm thinking a siesta is a good thing.
Also, just to mention something, I'm notoriously bad at doing nice things. So people who know me, it's kind of one of my things that I have a huge difficulty enjoying nice things. So I'm not the best person to give advice on doing the small nice things in life.
But do you think that comes from your Marxist roots?
I'm not sure. It comes also from maybe my grandmother's Christian roots. So there's more going on there. But even within, it's very easy, even within a rational context, to have this as this, it's the, do something that sucks every day. So you mix a bit of stoicism there and you tell yourself, no, I'm making myself harder and it's good for me in the long term. So there's a lot going on there.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's unusual. I know a lot. I've had elements of that myself, and I've definitely seen it widespread where it's the kind of mentality that like I can feel good about myself when I'm doing something that contributes to some kind of long range purpose and productive purpose. And it can be like a knowledge related purpose. So, if I'm reading through, what's the guy who wrote that amazing history of the world that everybody sets out to read over the course of a decade.
Not Will Durant.
Durant's series of history, right? But if I'm just doing something that seems kind of trivial for the joy in the moment, well, and I posted, I mentioned this in a piece I wrote on happiness a little while back, where somebody was tweeting about like, put away the music, you listen to a podcast, and it's like, I think that's really wrong, but I totally get it. Because it's the idea, like for a long period, aside from reading Atlas and The Fountainhead occasionally, almost never read fiction. And the reason why is I always felt like I could be learning something right now. And so, but I remember Leonard Peikoff, I believe in his lecture course, Judging, Feeling, and Not Being Moralistic, has this point about like, you make a really big error if everything is about the long range. And you never do anything in the here and now, because all you actually live in and exist in is the here and now. And the whole idea is that you should never sacrifice the long range to the short range. But insofar as you're not doing that, you should try to eke, and this is an exact quote, but this is the idea, is you should try to eke every last pleasure you can out of the here and now. And I thought that's a really healthy perspective. And so I think part of what you need to think about to not sacrifice the long range, like some things are really obvious, right? Like, to take the example that's not realistic, but like you don't cut off your head to cure a headache. But I think the more, Nikos, you raise cases that I think are harder to grasp or are harder to deal with, where it's not, it can sometimes be obvious you're sacrificing the short range to the long range, but it's like, to put it in hedonism's terms, they would say the justification for something being a value is that it gives you pleasure. And that's not the justification of a value on the objectivist view. So I think you need one level of being able to answer like, well, why am I after this? And think, is that a good motivation? And that's true, not just of something like, hey, a glass of champagne at New Year's. It's true of engaging in productive work. Why am I working right now? Is it because I'm really trying to achieve something? Or is part of my motivation that my personal life's a mess and I don't want to deal with it? And so always in pursuing a value, I think you have to ask at least one level of why. Like, why am I after this? Because that's really going to condition whether this is a value or whether it's not. It's just a kind of pretense at a value.
Right. And having said all that, though, you are somewhere in your career and in your life where you are in high demand. So I would say, let me push back a bit on this. The fact that you spend your time reading, listening to podcasts and reading self-development books and productivity books and communication books is paying off. So looking to my past, I would say I wish I was doing more of the quotes, and I put it in many, many quotes, stoic things, do what is better. So do more what sucks, but which is going to be good for you later. And there's not even reason why to call it stoic and not objective. It's because doing something which is good for the long term is something which is good for you. So I'm not sure why I'm even calling it the stoic thing.
Well, because you're saying it sucks. You're saying do what sucks because you know that it somehow benefits you in the long term. But how can it suck? How come one can't wrap their mind around, oh, this is a value I want. So, learn to enjoy it.
That's true. Working out doesn't suck.
Right. It may be painful sometimes, especially if you're really out of shape. It takes you a while to get into that mindset where you look forward to putting yourself through that physical anxiety. But if you approach everything that is pro-life as if it's good, it doesn't suck, it's good, then you'd probably have less resistance to it, or feel, I don't know, less divided or conflicted about doing it. I remember Jeff Goldblum years ago saying something that should have been self-evident to me as an objectivist, and he's not an objectivist, but he was a total health nut. He ate very healthy food, and he very rarely went off that. But his point of view was, no, I love it. I have no desire to do this other stuff, this, because I know I'm doing something good for myself, and it gave him pleasure to do something good for himself.
I think there's definitely cases where you will inevitably feel a conflict, like, right? Like, working out doesn't suck for me, but that doesn't mean I always enjoy like stopping what I'm doing, going out into the rainy afternoon, traveling there and getting started. I think what it is if there's an enduring, significant conflict between what I think is good for me and what I have to do, that's almost always a problem. I can think of examples where that's not true. I mean, I didn't go to grad school, and I know some objectivist philosophers have loved grad school, but I could imagine a scenario like, Leonard talked about utterly hating it, but it was a path to his values. But I would say, in general, you should be alert to, like, if the short term does suck, that's something I have to really think about. Does this make any sense? Because I don't think that throughout life there should be this inherent conflict between what's good for me and what I enjoy.
I can think of some exceptions, which I'm not sure exactly where they would fall. So, for example, let me give a particular example. Okay. I always hated violence, and I'm very uncomfortable with violence. At the same time, at some point, I realized in my life, you have to do something about it. So I started doing martial arts. I've never, ever, ever enjoyed martial arts, ever, or self-defense, never. I tell myself that maybe I enjoy it, but it's more like a duty. I have to do it because I'm uncomfortable with conflict, I'm uncomfortable with confrontation, and I need to do something about it. So where would you put this? So I don't get the pleasure, but I'm entirely convinced that it's something which is good. And you could say, yeah, maybe you can try different styles, but in a way, the more realistic it becomes, and the more useful for me it becomes, the more I don't like it. And I get injured, and I get annoyed when I get injured, and all that stuff. So I think there are cases, as you hinted, that you consistently not like it, but you like the result. Let's put it this way. You like the result. Whereas, for example, with fitness, I like the process. I feel good with the endorphins and all that stuff. And I also like the results.
I mean, maybe my knee-jerk reaction is stop doing it. Like,
No, but Nikos, I understand exactly what you're talking about, because when I got to a high level of martial arts, even as a green belt, even as an intermediate, my teacher put me in black belt classes to spar black belts. And when I was boxing, the thing I hated most was getting in the ring and sparring. I don't like getting hit. I know people who do, but to me, getting hit by a guy who knows how to hit in the liver, in the nose, in the jaw, it is not good for you. It doesn't feel good. It has lasting effects on your body. I have neurological damage from the punishment that I took. I eventually had to stop. So it's learning how to deal with conflict effectively that is really invigorating. Now, can one do it without imperiling their body in the long term? It depends on how high a level you want to reach. I mean, I would spar with the Olympic teams in Taekwondo, and that's a fairly high level, and you get hurt. I would, and the professionals I sparred with in boxing were high level, and they weren't trying to kill me, but you get hurt. And jiu-jitsu is the same way. I mean, I've gotten hurt every time I do jiu-jitsu, but it's an art that I look at from the outside, and I'm jealous of people who have a great skill level at it. It's something that I want to achieve, but you have to have a constellation of physical things going for you in order to achieve a certain level, which you may not have, and that impedes your joy in achievement there. So that, you're right, that is a really, really, really tough thing. I would say stop when you think the damage may be doing something long term to you.
And that is definitely true about I think that there's many, many skills. Like you can set aside martial arts. If you think about music, it is so enjoyable to play piano or play guitar once you're good at playing piano and guitar. And early on, you're so excited that sometimes it's not a big deal to feel completely inept at it and not be able to do it. But there's a long stretch between when it's inept and when it feels very natural. And if you don't enjoy that process, like there's an extent to which that process can be bothersome and you have to just push through it. But my view is like, all right, if you're a year and a half in guitar and you're not enjoying the process of learning, even if you think, yeah, in 10 years, I'm going to be like, it'll have that kind of smooth, beautiful feel of Jimmy Page or something like that. My view is stop doing it. Like life is too short and you might, like the outcome of it, but you're just spending a significant chunk of your life doing something you don't want to do. Stop it. Go find something where you like the outcome and you like the process.
Yeah, but what if it's important for your values? So let's say being strong and being able to defend yourself, I can say rationally, it's a value. In a way, you protect your other values. So, but anyway, I don't want to monopolize it on whether you should do good things that suck. So returning to the pleasure thing, then let me bring two examples on the table. The one is I mentioned the siesta. So I enjoy siestas. They're invigorating. At the same time, they're a black hole on your time. Because think about it. 10, 15 minutes going to bed, doing some pre-bed reading, maybe usually some fiction. Then even if the siesta is 10, 15 minutes, then you have to make coffee. Then you need like half an hour to wake up. So suddenly you've missed 1.5 hours in the middle of your day. So there's a way that you can see it. Oh, I become more productive because I'm going to stay up for longer. On the other side, it's taking away your time. And I would say also the fireplace is another thing. It's nice. It takes too much of your time. So the point is, what if something is pleasurable but difficult to integrate it with where you want your life to be? Another example that I could give is, let's stick to these two before I bring more controversial ones.
Well, I have some thoughts, but Mark, do you want to start off?
Well, I mean, there's something to that Zen idea of eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. There's something to the idea of being in the moment and letting yourself enjoy even simple moments like that without letting it derail your entire sense of how productive your day is or how productive your life is going. I mean, we're all about self-improvement and we're all about, reaching higher. But the art of living is knowing when to do that and when to just chill, when to be right here and now, when to allow yourself to sleep and know that that's good for you too, recharging your battery for that day, even if it takes another half an hour to get back up into your full capacity again. I think it's worth it, but it's an art. And the fact that it's an art makes it unique to each of us and a little intangible, right? Hard for us to say, well, how do we do that? You know what I mean? Like to give ourselves the roadmap.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I mean, look, I think it depends on a person's purpose. Like if you're Elon Musk and you're running 3 companies, all right, every minute of your day not geared towards that has a huge, enormous cost for your fundamental values in life. But my view is that in general, I'll just speak for myself. Like I'm going to be the value creating work I do is primarily going to come in the 3 to 4 hours in which I can really do what, Cal Newport calls deep creative work. And my view is that the rest of the day, I want to kind of work when I want to work and do things, when I want to do them and just be very much relaxed and enjoying myself. And I don't feel like I have this burden. Like am I making optimal use of every minute? Did I do something really creative today and enjoy myself and feel good going through my day? And this idea of like, oh, I cost myself 15 minutes taking a nap. Hell, man, like I'm willing to fall asleep and an hour passed by. I don't do that too often, but like I think it really depends on your goals. And I think I have pretty ambitious goals, but I have in most times in the last few years have a really relaxed kind of open schedule. And externally, if you were measuring it by is this all achievement oriented, I waste a lot of time. But on the other hand, like I feel just so relaxed and at peace going about it.
And Nikos, I just want to say there's lots of forms of productivity, and some of the stuff we're talking about here is just personal, intangible stuff. Recharging your battery is just as important as writing for 500 words that day. It's a part of you, right? It's a part of you. It's a part of what you need to keep going. Yeah, having that fire may be a small pleasure. It may take up some time, but it's one of those intangibles. You know how materialists rank wealth by your income, and we sort of, at least I do. I can't speak for you guys. I rank wealth, and I look at it in a very different way. Wealth and profit is more than a material thing for me. It could be very immaterial. It could be a spiritual value that I get from something, and that spiritual value can make quite a difference in your life. So I don't think you should diminish it at all. It's great to have ambition, and I love to hear that, but don't let it overshadow these little things that make for the symphony, right? The silence in between the notes are just as important as the notes themselves in the symphony.
That's a nice way to put it. So, okay, so as not to be Mr. Negative and Mr. who can't enjoy anything, let me tell you the one thing I really consistently enjoy and is integrated with all my other goals. And this is a daily stroll, walking in a nice place, listening to audiobooks. I usually listen either to Fountainhead or to Atlas because it's rejuvenating, but also it has made me kind of a quote expert on learning the books by heart and being easy to bring examples. So it's good for health because walking is good. Particularly, I like walking with quote barefoot shoes. They are the shoes with a very, very light sole. So I find out that quite often when you walk a lot even with sports shoes that are not good, you can get, and I'm talking walking more than like 3 miles, you can get some pains and stuff. With these shoes, you get some time to get used to them, but they are excellent for strolls. So I forget everything. I rejuvenate. I get completely immersed in the audiobook. But again, it has to be somewhere nice, somewhere quiet. When I was in York, I was doing it by the river and by the woods, and in my new house, which is close to the sea in Athens, in a suburb of Athens, I do it in quiet streets, or even sometimes maybe when the weather is better, by the sea. So this is a pleasure, and this is also rejuvenating, and it's also integrating. So it's my everyday. It's a thing that I enjoy even more, I would say, than working out. Although I would never leave aside working out. But so the daily stroll is the thing I enjoy the most.
Yeah, I am being mewed at by one of my favorite sources of joy, which is animals broadly, but my cats in particular. Thank you, Allison. We'll be going to the super chat soon, but Allison says, Don, there's a simple pleasure next to meowing. Yeah, that is for sure. I never fail to marvel at the fact of like, oh my God, there's these wild creatures who are living in the house, and like like it's like if squirrels just came in and started hanging out on my bed. So that's a huge one for me. I think the one of my big ones, and this goes to the kinds of pleasures that you were mentioning, Nikos. I really do think small things that feed into our kind of grandest pleasures or grandest values. those are a big one for me, and it's easy to miss. So like, for instance, my office is like, that's the one environment I'm very concerned with, like crafting. So you can't see it here probably. I mean, we're moving because we bought a house, which is another joy and pleasure in and of itself.
Congrats.
But I have this big yellow carpet that kind of lights up the room. And so I walk in and start my day, and it's, boom, like I feel, all right, it's fresh, exciting, even though it's, 5 a.m. and the sun's not up, right? Like it gives that kind of like brightness, welcoming feel to it. And then the other thing is like a good pen, like this, and a good journal. Those things I feel like are potential that are just going to be filled with, brilliant insights and a lot of not so brilliant insights. So I love small pleasures like that, small ones where they very much feed our kind of grand scale values.
Wait, so you're moving again to a new house, or is this the house that you bought last?
This is an apartment. So this is the first house that we bought.
Okay, no, so this is the one with the cool carpet.
Yeah, we haven't moved yet. So this is my current office that I've had for the last 2 years.
But you're moving to a new one. Okay, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So Mark, what's one of your small joys?
Oh, I mean, I love teaching with my wife. I think we make a great team, and teaching in general is a joy, but the way we complement each other when we teach, I fill in her blanks, she fills in my blanks, and it becomes sort of this complete unit that gives the student something pretty profound. That's I love that experience.
Just as an aside, that's a really good one. But my wife, Kate, was supposed to be on this show today just because she has a lot to offer in this topic. But unfortunately, we forgot to put it in the calendar. And so she scheduled something else. But I definitely can relate to that feeling, Mark. That's a really good one.
And I great. I love that. I also love when you're working in what you call the pocket, in boxing, they call, when you're boxing inside the pocket, in acting, when you're in that pocket and you're completely unself-conscious and you're just being in the moment with the other person, that's a great joy. My dog, Frankie, is like, anybody who knows me knows that, my life is around, a lot of my life is around my little guy here that, just stole my heart 15 years ago. It's he's got part of it. My wife has the other part of it. He definitely gives me joy looking in those big brown eyes. I could do it for hours. I could actually waste, if you call it that, lots of time just sitting there with the guy and playing with him, because he's such a joy. And there's music and work. I work out in the morning. I do yoga and body exercises to try to keep my aging and injured bodies a little more flexible and supple than it is. I enjoy doing good things for myself. Taking walks. We're in Paris right now, so my wife and I walk all the time in Paris, and it's not easy keeping up with her. She's got these little legs, but she goes fast, and it's a sort of cornucopia of sensations walking to a place like Paris, especially at sunset. It's quite beautiful. So
let me say something about Paris and walking. I was in Paris for a few hours last week because we had an event with Yaron in Reims, if I'm pronouncing it right.
You should have come by. You should have said hello.
I didn't know you were in Paris, and I literally only had 3.5 hours in Paris. But because it's my favorite city, I got a separate flight from Yaron. So I woke up at 4:30 to fly from Vienna to Paris so that I could spend 3 hours walking in Paris. I broke my walking record. So my previous walking record was something like 19 kilometers. In Paris that morning, and in Reims, I did 20 kilometers.
Wow.
Paris is the most beautiful city for me that was ever built and will ever be built. Particularly that part, because the minute you go a bit outside from the center, it's gone downhill. But it's such a beauty, and I know that many objectivists prefer like New York or London because it has this vibe of productive. Talking about pleasures, walk around the scene, walk around Quartier Latin, walk around the kiosks by the river. That city is pleasure in stone, to use that phrase from who said it. So I envy you in a good way for living in Paris. It's a goal of mine if I ever have FU money to like spend as much time as I want in Paris. It's my favorite city in the world.
Well, we'll pretend that kilometers are a real measure of distance, and
so you
that
went
is
like 12 miles. That's what you did, right? 12 miles.
Something like that. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Well, it reminds me, so I have a book that I read a little while back called Joyful, and it is about kind of small things that spark joy and how to fill your life with more of them. But one of the things she keeps coming back to is just the importance of environment, right? And your kind of surroundings, whether it's your kind of like local surroundings inside your house or apartment or something, but also, you know, where you live and the, you know, the benefits of nature, the benefits of a city, like all of the kind of texture and energy and the stuff that it's the kinds of pleasures that are often in the background and they have a real impact, but we seldom notice them. And so one of two things, you seldom notice if you're really like deprived in that area, but you often don't take notice of it and eke the joy out of it. You can. And that's why, like Nikos, I love the idea of like, I love Paris. And then I'm going to walk through Paris. I'm going to go out of my way to walk through Paris. I'm going to walk in phony kilometers for, you know, a super long time in Paris. I think that's amazing. It sounds like a really, like, that's just such a perfect way to kind of unite your values and eke like so much out of them rather than just like, I flew through Paris. That's a nice place to visit. Wish I could spend more time.
But it's also the context, right? So the context for me was unique, that I'm touring with Yaron, which some years ago would be a dream. So in a way it was not you've earned it, but you've earned to do something which is going to unite this beautiful professional thing with this other value. So everything has to be within that context. So remember that dialogue between Dagny and Hank. Celebration is for people who have something to celebrate. And this is not to say you people have nothing to celebrate. In a way, it's the opposite. When you have something to celebrate, find a nice way to make it more beautiful, because otherwise you are missing something. You're missing something which is important.
Nikos, I have a non-objectivist book to recommend to you. And you may hate me for this.
I won't.
It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
I've heard so many people suggest this book. I'll give it a shot. I've heard it. You're not the first person who personally recommends this to me, and they say I would benefit from it.
I think you would, because it's about a boy and his father who go on a motorcycle trip, and they read one book. I think it takes them a year to go across country. It's been a long time since I've read it. But the substance of the book is about quality over quantity. It's not how many books you read. It's not how much information you take in. It's how you devour each thing. It's how you immerse yourself in each thing. I do like the Zen, I don't want to say problem, but the Zen solution to problems in some respects, to immerse yourself in, to fully engage your attention in something, can do wonders for taking that good but judgmental aspect out of some of your actions, so that you actually just enjoy things that previously sucked. You probably will enjoy more the more you learn to focus that attention and immerse yourself into the process. For me, that helps as an actor, because we're always watched, we're always being judged. And the more you can forget about that, the more you take that thing off of your shoulder and throw it away and just say, I'm doing this for me. I don't give a shit if I get this part. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I feel right now and what I think is good, and damn everything else. It's liberating. Anyway, this book can, I think, can alter your flame of attention a little bit in a way that I think will be very healthy for you.
I will download it before going to the London trip next week. One last question to both of you before we go to Super Chat, and I haven't got a clock. I don't know even how late we are. What about small pleasures that are objectively not good for you? So, for example, quite often, I enjoy the occasional cigarette, but later I feel guilt about it, and I know it's not good for me, blah, 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 blah. What do we make of these small pleasures which are not good for you?
What does it mean it's not good for you, right? Because dose is everything. Like one cigarette every few months, like that's like having a piece of chocolate every few months. Now, if it becomes a habit, then it becomes a real problem, right? So I would even challenge the idea of not good for me. I think a lot of things that in some sense cannot be good, and let's even grant are often not used well. I don't think that you can say that a person who's occasionally has a cigarette is doing something bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, I have very strong feelings about this particular issue, just because my grandfather died of cancer and my mother gave up smoking when she was in her 30s, but still died of lung cancer at 56. Now, granted, they smoked quite a bit. And when I tried to get my grandfather to smoke, his response was, "But I enjoy it." Well, he enjoyed it right to the cancer ward, and into the coffin. And I also used to drink quite happily. So I've sort of sworn a lot of that stuff off and don't consider them pleasures anymore. You know what I mean? Like I could consider a chocolate pleasure because it's also beneficial for my health. It's also good for me if I have it, like Don said, in a certain quantity. I mean, objectively, you're right, Don. One cigarette every once in a while probably ain't going to kill you, but it's such a bad thing to do to your body that it's like a punch to the head. It's like everybody has their quota, and you don't know where that quota is with you. You don't know what that final cigarette is. I don't know what I was finding out what my final quota for punches was. And you don't want to find that out, right? So I don't know. I think it helps me to feel a little bit weird about smoking.
Well, part of it is we have to make a big distinction. So, I mean, this is a kind of argument that comes up, or not an argument, but it's a kind of issue or question that comes up with like doing a risky job. And the idea is like, you guys say that you're for life, but how could you be an ice road trucker? I mean, this is a super dangerous job that, you're risking your life every time you go out there. And like objectivists are not Puritans to say like, don't eat anything that might give you a heart attack because you could make that argument about like any kind of food that has any potential negative side effects. And I don't even think we know enough about diet to really have a clear idea of what foods those are. And the issue is that now this isn't the last word on it. So, let me wrap up this thought. I have a bad habit of qualifying things before I say them, and nobody knows how to process that. So the point that I was going to make is that objectivism says you can't, what is off the table is anything at odds with reality. So it's anything where you're evading the facts of reality, where you're making and so if you pick a career that's at war with reality, such as like, I'm going to indoctrinate kids with Marxism, like, no, that's off the table. But risk per se, there's nothing, it's perfectly fine for a person to say the kind of life I want to live is the life of an ice road trucker. It's a productive career. It creates values, and I'm willing to accept the risks. And the goal is like my life, but my life is not my life with as many years as possible. It's a conception of a whole of a self-sustaining whole. And I think the same thing is true of pleasures. I don't think you can go from the fact that something might have a potential negative impact on health to the idea that it's bad for you. Now, health is a value. So you can have a view that says, I'm not going to value anything that has, potential negative impacts on health. But if a person's making an eyes wide open decision, I wouldn't put having the occasional cigarette in the same category of, being a Scientologist or something.
Right. Yeah. And the question is how much of it is, and the question again comes back to what is pleasure? Because that first inhale is so pleasurable, but then how often do you feel good after a cigarette? For me, the answer is never. How good do you feel the day after? Again, the answer is never. But then again, I use it as a way of relaxing. So anyway, that's That's
and that goes
that's
back to, and this is a question that everybody has to answer for themselves, but this is why I think, this is why I highlighted early on, like you always have to ask the question of why do I get pleasure out of this, and inspect that and go, is this rational? Is this something I endorse? Is this something that fits in the whole context of my goals and values? Because, for one person, like having a couple glasses of wine on Friday night, like that can be part of a romantic evening. For a professional athlete, that could be really dumb. Now, I know a lot of professional athletes will have that glass of wine, but you get my point of you have to see things in the full context and ask, what am I getting out of it? And so I'm certainly not arguing that a person who says, yeah, I don't want any part of, tobacco or alcohol is making a wrong decision. But I don't want us to I don't think there's a duty to forswear all pleasures that have potential side effects.
No disagreement here.
All right. Any thoughts on that, Mark, before we go to super chats?
No, I agree with you.
All right. So a lot of super chats, though fewer questions than usual. Mary Aline, thank you very much for your super chat. Sammy is bored again. Hopefully that is the name and not a comment on the content. Luckily that came in like 3 minutes in. So I'm very, very optimistic that we're okay in that front. Allison, thank you for your super chat. Says Nikos, your fireplace is a simple pleasure. One of the few negatives, we bought this old Victorian house and it's incredible, but the one thing that we don't have that my wife was desperate for, and I'm like, oh, that'd be okay, is a fireplace. In fact, you walk in and there's a big fireplace there, and we're like, oh wait, there's no chimney, and they say, oh, it doesn't actually work, it doesn't even have a gas fire, it looks like a fireplace. We said that's ridiculous.
So let me tell you something about fireplaces though. So in my I'm actually in the basement of the family house because I ended up having to quarantine here, although now my quarantine is getting over. I decided to go for a house without a fireplace because the fireplace is, again, a black hole on your time. It needs constant work on it. The heat it provides is very, very minimal. So, okay, if there's like an electricity outage, if you literally sit here, it helps, but otherwise it's not. So it's more like an idea rather than useful. It's nice every now and then if you want to, let's say, relax or whatever, but it's a commitment, and I'm not missing it in my actual house.
Yeah, and I'm closer to your kind of view of it. For my wife, it's a big one, but I remember my first serious girlfriend, I really got close with her and her family, and every evening they would light up the fireplace and we would all sit around, and sometimes we would all just read, sometimes talk, and everything. But it was part of creating this very purposeful environment that we're just going to connect here together in a peaceful, relaxing way for a couple hours at the end of the night. And that was really magnificent. So I think it's just one of those things that can really add spice to something. But I wasn't going to turn down the dream house for.
Don't turn down the dream house. The reason I'm saying is because for almost 2 months, I wanted the fireplace to be parts of the house I was looking for, but I found one without a fireplace, and I'm not missing it.
Well, let me ask you guys. Go ahead, Mark.
Ambiance is important.
Yeah, but let me ask you guys. I think, do you guys, can you think of any things that are kind of if you ask people, oh, what gives you pleasure? And I don't, we've talked about things that have obvious negative side effects, but things like potential pleasures that you think are just overblown, or maybe it's stuff we're supposed to enjoy, but tend to not actually enjoy.
So things that are overrated, you mean?
Yeah. What are overrated pleasures?
I would say vacations, because I haven't been to one since 2017. But maybe it's because I can't enjoy life, or I didn't have the right company. Who knows? I'm
actually right there with you, Nikos. I love looking forward to vacations, and once in a while they'll be amazing. And when I go to Ocon, but that's not exactly a vacation, but I get to hang out and talk with cool people. But I would say that more often than not, the actual vacation I find stressful or boring, or both.
Well, I mean, I live a gypsy life. So for me, my whole life is a vacation. I'm jumping around from state to state. I live everywhere practically except my own home. So I can't make the distinction necessarily between vacation and life. I think we might have one in August coming up, and that'll be a vacation. But
something else which is super overrated: concerts. I know I'm gonna alienate many people. I've never had a good time in a concert. I never got the point. Like, what's the point? The music is never as good as it is when you listen to it by yourself. Concerts are overrated. Sorry, people.
That's another one I agree with, except for before she got famous, I used to go see Sarah Bareilles perform at these little like nightclubs in LA. I'd stand right in front of the stage. You know, a year later, she became best-selling pop star. And then I tried to watch her from the rafters and I was like, this is lame. So I like little music clubs.
Yeah.
But concerts, a whole different thing. I'm with you, Mark.
Hey man, I've seen some great concerts. I saw Metallica when they were on their way up to being rock stars at the Country Club in Reseda. They weren't even the headlining band, and they killed. They were on fire. And I've seen tons of rock bands, man. That was like very memorable experiences for me.
Well, this is the old man in me. I saw Tool in 2019, which I absolutely adore them. And I was expecting to arrive there and like, oh God, it's gonna be a whole bunch of sweaty people like pushing against each other. No, we had seats. We got to relax, chill, see an amazing show. But I've had amazing experiences too. And Metallica's great live. I've seen them probably 3 or 4 times, not when they were up and coming, because they had come up by the time I was able to see them, but it was really cool. But nevertheless, overall, I found that concerts are mostly waiting around, often uncomfortable. But when they're good, they can be pretty good, in my opinion.
So my rule for life is, if you have to queue for it, don't do it. I mean, okay, we queue in Disneyland. I remember it. I had a disagreement today with Raz. He was like, dude, I have booked this great restaurant for next week. Well, the only issue is if you are 5 minutes late, you can't go there and there's like a queue for them. Like, no. Life can be better than queuing. Like, particularly, okay, in York, every Saturday, there were queues for like Wagamama. Okay, no offense, but for brands. Like, why would you queue? And everyone in the queue looked so defeated. Like, no one looked happy in the queue. Don't wait in a queue. Life can be better than looking defeated in a queue.
Well, that's one of my answers of overrated is Disneyland or Disney World, because I always joke that every time I go to the grocery store, I'm practicing for going like that it's Disney World, because most of Disney World is spent waiting in line. And like, if you're spending 8 hours somewhere and 5 hours is standing in line, I can see what you guys are saying, but you have to go with the right people. If you go with the right people, look, I used to go to Disneyland all the time. I had a passport that I could go every single day of the week. And I used to go like 3-4 days a week. And I remember for one of my birthdays, Tracy and I took a bunch of people to Disneyland. 95% of them were cynical as hell. They're like, shit, this corporate place, we're going to have a terrible time. It's Disneyland. You know, they were totally corrupted. I said, no, you've never been to Disneyland with me. And you are going to walk in 30 years old and leave 6 years old, and you will be transformed. Trust me. And you know what? They all had a blast. You have to bring the right combination of people. You have to be with people who really love the place and know the place. And then lines are nothing. They don't seem like anything. All right. Well, clearly I have to go to Disney with Mark. That would be.
This is
what's
true.
that, Nikos?
Which was this Euro Disney or the American ones?
American.
Okay.
But we've been to Euro Disney as well.
Yeah, no, I love Disneyland, particularly Frontierland and the Pirates of the Caribbean before it was cool. So, no, Disneyland is not overrated. But queuing for a Saturday brunch, definitely overrated.
Well, Mark, you've defended most of the overrated ones we've shot down. Anything that comes to mind for you?
Citizen Kane. No. My wife just looked at me like, what? Licorice pizza. Yeah, there's what's overrated? Oh my God.
Sushi. Sushi has to be overrated.
No, I love sushi.
All right, now I will take a firm stand
and
that sushi's an objective value.
Sushi's an objective value, and if you have it in Tokyo, you're gonna even think it's a stratospheric value, if that's a word. I can't think of. I mean, I'll have to, maybe I look back on my past and I say getting drunk is overrated.
Well, I think the problem, Mark, is you're too good at enjoying things, so you're able to suck the pleasure out of anything that you do. Even
learning
Disney.
I'm learning to do that, but it's I'm 56 years old, so I better get on it already.
That's awesome. Regina, thank you for your super chat, as well as Jonathan. Allison says naps are amazing. They also help with motivation and give you the energy you need to do things when procrastinate's over. Do the chores before the fun. Mary Aline says, this morning I walked by one of the old Carnegie libraries. There was a blossoming tree in front of it. I stood there for a few minutes, enjoyed it. I love that. Libraries in general, even if they're kind of like small rinky-dink ones in a small town, just the idea of there's books in there, never gets old to me. Books are a small pleasure for mine, even aside from reading them. Obviously, reading them, writing them, that's a huge pleasure. But I just love, like, I collect books the way I used to collect baseball cards, the way I currently collect baseball cards. I just want to have them, like, look at them, and like there's potential knowledge in there. Like every unread book is this little piece of potential magic. And every read book is kind of like a testament to, some memory and maybe a bad one, but the books are huge for me on the joy list. Allison, thank you for your super chat. This was the one we already talked about with my beautiful, lovely cats who are also jerks. And then Allison says, do y'all consider social media a simple pleasure? Well, I consider it sometimes a pleasure and definitely not simple, because I think it's really hard to make it pleasurable and very easy for it to become something other than pleasure. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah.
I've never experienced them as pleasure. I mean, there are some pleasurable people to watch. I would mostly consider it, quote, work. So if I were a multi-trillionaire, I wouldn't be in social media.
Well, I'll give the example of when I find it pleasurable. So, I fell back in love with baseball in 2019, but I didn't have any sports friends. My wife hated it, wouldn't watch with me. And so what I do is when I watch the Phillies play, I get on Phillies Twitter and I have my people that we can go back and forth with on what's happening in front of us. And to me, that is, it feels as close as I'm going to get, to being in a room with other fans. So most of the time I agree with you 100%, Nikos, but that's what I'm saying. I do see, I have experienced. And the other thing I do is I have a bunch of art accounts that are in my Twitter and Facebook feeds. And so just throughout my day, gorgeous like photos and paintings and things pop up. So those are small ways of orienting it towards pleasure, but that's definitely not the default that I have with social media, for sure.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing for me as well, but it's connected me to a lot of interesting people who have affected my life in very positive ways. So I'll take that. I think it balances out the negative of the negativists on there, the trolls. And it also I started getting into Twitter because it's like, oh, I think I can, this is forcing me to make my ideas more economical. It's forcing me to think better and say things more clearly. And so I sort of use it as practice for that. And that when you find a good concept and you're able to say it cleanly and clearly, that's pleasurable.
Yeah, for sure. Marilyn is really stirring up the controversy. She has 2 comments: get a gas fireplace or forget it. I don't know if we want to get into a whole debate, but I see the upside of and have experienced the upside of gas fireplaces, but it's not the same. particularly if you actually want it to warm you at all, it's useless. And then she adds, sushi sucks. Well, that's enough to get you kicked out of the Objectivist movement. So we will hopefully the powers that be did not hear. Robert says, thank you for your super chat. Social medias like Mark's Disneyland queue. It's great if you curate your friends list and just have the right kind of people there. I think it's a good connection, a good way to wrap up. So upcoming today at 7 p.m. UK time, we have Enjoy Parenting with Kyle Steele. Lisa unfortunately lost her voice, so Kyle will be sitting in one alone for her on Giving In, Perilous or Practical. At 8 p.m. UK time, we have Communication Boot Camp with yours truly, and at 10 p.m. UK time, Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasser. Any final thoughts before we sign off, guys?
I think these are great ideas for episodes. So one of the pleasures is working with you guys. Seriously, the Thursday episodes are my favorite ones.
Well, we can't top that. So thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Thanks, guys.